In a world ruled by strength, mercy is seen as weakness. And healers are considered the most useless of all. This is a werewolf romance story about a girl no one wanted, a king who was forbidden to love, and a bond fate refused to let die. She was sold in chains, valued less than coin, dismissed as fragile and expendable. He was a wolf king bound by duty, sworn never to take a mate, only alliances to keep his pack strong. They were never meant to meet. And yet, fate pulled them together in the darkest of places. This is not a story of instant love. It is a slow burn, fated mates werewolf romance, where trust is earned in silence, loyalty is built through sacrifice, and a Luna rises not through power, but through compassion. So settle in, because this is the story of how a healer with no value became the heart of a kingdom, and how a king lost control of everything the moment his wolf whispered one word. Mine. Chapter 1. They called it a market, but everyone in the border territories knew what it really was. The air smelled of smoke, iron and fear. Torches hissed against the cold night wind. Chains scraped across wooden planks as wolves were dragged onto the raised platform one after another. Some growled. Some begged. Some stared blankly ahead. Around the square, warriors leaned against stone walls, arms folded. Merchants whispered about bloodlines and usefulness. Minor alphas watched with sharp, calculating eyes. Strength built packs. Dominance kept them alive. And anything that did not add to power was disposable. Ilara. Wolf-born healer. Border pack destroyed. Unclaimed. The announcement rang out like a verdict. A murmur followed. Not curiosity. Not sympathy. Dismissal. Ilara stepped forward when forced, iron biting into her wrists. The cold metal burned against skin rubbed raw from travel. She kept her gaze lowered, though she could feel their eyes crawling over her, judging, measuring, reducing her. She was not human. She was a wolf, which made this humiliation sink deeper. A healer, someone scoffed. A low chuckle followed. Strange gift to have when your pack still fell. In times like these, we need fighters. Not someone who works with leaves. The words weren't shouted. They didn't need to be. They carried the weight of truth in this world. Ilara swallowed. Her wolf curled inward beneath her ribs, small, quiet, but alive. Months of hunger and captivity had weakened her. She had hidden her gift during the purge. Healing did not intimidate attackers. It made you a target. The auctioneer raised his hand. Opening offer. Silence. The kind that presses against your ears. The kind that confirms your worth. Nothing. Her heart beat steadily anyway. If no one bid, she might be discarded. If someone bid too low, she would be owned by someone who saw her as barely worth feeding. Finally, a thick-armed male near the front lifted his hand lazily. Half the standard. A ripple of laughter moved through the square. She's a gamble. Good for patching cuts. Not worth much more. Half price. Ilara inhaled slowly. That meant labor. That meant breeding seasons without choice. That meant surviving by enduring. The gavel began to rise. And then, something changed. It wasn't sound. It wasn't sight. It was pressure. The air tightened. Every wolf in the square felt it at the same time. Spines straightened. Voices died. Instinct bowed before reason could. The iron gates at the courtyard entrance opened. Bootsteps echoed across stone. Slow. Measured. Unhurried. The High Mountain King did not attend border auctions, which was why silence turned sharp when he entered. Rail did not need to announce himself. Power radiated from him in controlled waves, not wild, not reckless. It was the kind of strength that did not need to roar to be feared. Ilara felt it before she saw him, and somewhere deep inside her, her wolf stirred. Not with fear. With awareness. Rael had not planned to stop here. But the moment he crossed into the territory, something had begun pulling at him. A subtle tug beneath his skin. Irritating. Persistent. The instant he stepped into the square, it struck. A violent, undeniable force. His wolf surged forward with a roar inside his mind. Mine. The word wasn't suggestion. It was law. Rael's eyes snapped to the platform. To the she-wolf in chains. The bond locked into place with brutal certainty. Not attraction. Not curiosity. Fate. His jaw tightened. No. A king does not surrender to instinct. A mate becomes leverage. Alunaris chapselaiensis. He had been trained for control since boyhood. His wolf disagreed violently. Claim her. Rael started walking. Not toward the auctioneer. Toward her. The crowd parted immediately. He mounted the platform slowly. Boots striking wood with steady precision. Ilara felt him closer now. The heat of him. The weight of him. Her wolf rose fully inside her chest for the first time in months. Alert. Breathing. But confused. He stopped in front of her. Close enough that she could feel warmth against the cold air. Far enough that they did not touch. To everyone watching, it looked like assessment. Evaluation. Inspection. In reality, he was fighting a war inside his own skin. The bond pulled viciously between them. Claim her. Mark her. End this. For one restrained, selfish heartbeat, he allowed himself to simply stand there. To breathe her in. Wild herbs. Moonlight. Hidden steel beneath fear. A healer. A dismissed wolf. His mate. His wolf lunged forward. Desperate for contact. Rael gave it nothing. Control slammed back into place. You're a healer. His voice was steady. Calm. Completely detached from the storm beneath it. Yes, my king, she whispered. Her voice trembled despite her effort. I trained under my pack elders. Medicinal herbs. Bone alignment. Birth care. Hope flickered in her chest. Small. Fragile. Dangerous. He looked at her for one final second. Then stepped back. Triple the base. The square froze. Shock rippled outward. The previous bidder stiffened, but did not protest. No one challenged the High Mountain King. The gavel struck. Sold. The chains were unlocked quickly. Ilara was moved from the platform. Rael turned away as though the decision cost him nothing. Inside, his wolf was furious. You felt it. She did not. You deny her? Yes. He would buy her. He would protect her. He would ensure no one ever chained her again. But he would not claim her. He would not risk the balance of his kingdom for fate. The mountain path to the high mountain fortress was cruel. The wind cut like blades. The incline stole breath. Warriors shifted easily, running ahead in wolf form, then back again. Ilara walked. Each step burned. She's slowing us down, one soldier muttered. We should have reached the ridge already. The king sees further than we do. Another replied quietly. Or she won't survive long enough to matter. Ilara focused on breathing. Left foot. Right foot. Don't fall. By the third day, her vision swam. The world tilted. Her knees buckled. Stone met her skin. Silence followed. We move on, someone asked. Before anyone answered. Enough. Rael's voice cut cleanly through the wind. He had not looked back once during the journey. Until now. He did not approach her. Did not kneel. Did not risk contact. Instead, he looked at Rowan. We make camp. My king, the fortress is near. We make camp. Final. Absolute. Within moments, warriors obeyed. Fire was lit. Water boiled. Kale lifted Ilara carefully. Rael remained at a distance. Watching. Guarding. refusing the pull that begged him to close the space. If he touched her, the bond would ignite. She would know. And he was not ready for that truth. As night fell over the mountains, Elara drifted into exhausted sleep beside the fire, unaware of the silent sentinels standing watch beyond the light, unaware that fate had already chosen her, unaware that the most powerful alpha in the territory had felt the bond snap into place, and denied it. Chapter 2. The mountain did not forgive weakness. Neither did the fortress carved into it. By the time the gates closed behind them, Elara understood something with painful clarity. The High Mountain Pack did not survive because they were kind. They survived because they were relentless. The walls rose like sharpened stone blades against the sky. Windows were narrow slits. Corridors echoed with bootsteps and discipline. Even the wind seemed sharper here, slicing through courtyards as if testing every wolf it touched. This was not a place built for comfort. It was built to endure. And yet, she had not been thrown into a cell. She had not been branded. She had not even been questioned. A room awaited her in the lower wing. Clean furs, folded clothing, food delivered without comment. No explanation. No purpose. Just space. That unsettled her more than chains would have. Kale made sure she understood the boundaries. The southern wing is yours to move within, he said on her second morning, voice level. The kitchens, the outer courtyard, the lower training yard. And the rest of the fortress? She asked carefully. Not yours. His eyes lingered a moment. And you will not seek the northern tower. She didn't ask why this time. She knew. The Alpha King. Even speaking his title made her pulse shift strangely. Not fear. Something else. Something she refused to examine too closely. The fortress breathed differently when he was present. Before his return from border patrols, the halls carried muted conversation. Guards relaxed slightly between shifts. Kitchen staff shared quiet smiles. After he returned, everything sharpened. Conversations shortened. Spines straightened. He did not raise his voice. He didn't need to. Authority radiated from him like cold sunlight. Elara saw him only in passing. Once crossing the courtyard with advisors. Once ascending the stone steps toward the council chambers. He never looked at her. But every time he passed within range, her wolf stirred uneasily beneath her ribs. Restless. Alert. Drawn. She blamed proximity. He was alpha. Any wolf would feel that. Wouldn't they? She tried to make herself useful. It was instinct. A young servant scraped her arm on a broken crate. The cut wasn't deep, but it bled freely. I can close that, Elara offered softly. The girl hesitated. Before she could answer, an older worker shook her head sharply. Scars remind us to be careful. The girl pulled her arm back. Later, a guard twisted his wrist during sparring. Swelling already crept along the joint. It will stiffen by morning, Elara said gently. I can ease it now. The guard's jaw tightened. I'll manage. Over and over. The message was the same. Healing was not embraced here. Pain was currency. Endurance was proof. She began to understand something uncomfortable. If wolves relied on her, they might be seen as less. And if they were seen as less, that reflected on the king. So she stopped offering aloud. But she watched. And waited. The opportunity came sooner than she expected. The lower training yard was loud that morning. Younger pack members practiced controlled shifts, half-formed claws, sharpened senses, balanced drills on elevated stone beams. Elara swept the perimeter quietly, keeping her eyes lowered. Then it happened. A boy, no older than 10, misjudged his landing during a leap between platforms. His foot hit stone at the wrong angle. A sharp crack split the air. He fell hard. The yard went still. The boy tried to stand. collapsed instantly. His leg twisted unnaturally beneath him. The training master approached, expression stern but not cruel. Up, he ordered. The boy's breathing hitched. He pushed against the ground, fell again. Pain burned across his face. But worse than pain was the fear. Not of injury, of failing, of being deemed weak. Elara felt it like a physical strike. Around them, the pack watched. No one stepped forward. This was part of the forging. But forging could break metal just as easily as shape it. She moved. Not dramatically, not defiantly, just decisively. She knelt beside him. "Don't move," she murmured. The training master stiffened. "Stand down." She didn't. Her hands hovered over the twisted limb. For a breath, doubt flickered. If she did this, there would be no going back to invisibility. Then she let the power rise. Silver light spread softly from her palms, controlled, focused, deliberate. Not spectacle, not display, precision. She aligned the fracture before swelling locked it in place. Knit bone, reinforced tissue, stabilized the joint. The boy's shaking breath steadied. When she withdrew, his leg lay straight, whole. He flexed his ankle cautiously. No pain. A murmur rippled through the yard. Not mockery, not outrage. Surprise. The training master looked conflicted. Before he could speak, a deeper voice carried across the stone. What happened? The courtyard parted instantly. The Alpha King approached. Not rushed. Not alarmed. Measured. Always measured. The training master inclined his head. A fall. She intervened. Silence stretched. Elara rose slowly. She did not bow. She would not apologize for healing a child. The boy looked between them, uncertainty flickering across his young face. The king's gaze shifted to the child. "Can you stand?" The boy swallowed. "Yes, Alpha." "Then stand." The boy rose carefully, steady. A visible wave of relief passed through several watching wolves, quickly masked. The king's attention moved to Elara then. His expression gave nothing away. But he did not rebuke her, did not reprimand her, did not say anything. Instead, he addressed the yard. "Training resumes." That was it. An acknowledgement without words. The courtyard returned to motion. But the energy had shifted. Eyes followed her now. Not dismissive. Not entirely trusting. But aware. By evening, the change was subtle but real. A guard left a bundle of dried herbs outside her door. No notes and without any explanations. Just placed there. Later, the same young boy knocked hesitantly. "Thank you," he muttered, staring at the floor. Then ran before she could respond. Something fragile began to take root. Not acceptance, but possibility. High above, in the northern tower, the Alpha King stood before a council fire. Varric's voice carried irritation. "She disrupts tradition. The young must endure hardship." Rael's reply was calm. "The young must survive hardship." A pause. "She ensures they do." Silence followed. He had drawn a line. Subtle, but unmistakable. And far below, unaware of the quiet political shift unfolding because of her, Elara lay awake in her small chamber. Her wolf restless again. Not from fear. Not from danger. But from something that felt like standing at the edge of a storm she could not yet see. The fortress had not softened. It never would. But for the first time since she arrived, it had made space for her. And that was far more dangerous than chains. Influence does not arrive with noise. It arrives in hesitation. In the pause before a wolf says no. By the fourth day after the boy's fall, Elara felt it. Not acceptance. Not warmth. But the shift. A guard with a stiff gait lingered outside the southern storeroom longer than necessary. He did not ask for help. He did not look at her directly. But he did not leave either. "Elbow?" she asked quietly. He grunted. She stepped forward and worked in silence. No audience. No announcements. Just steady hands and controlled silver light. By dusk, 3 wolves had come. By the next evening, 5. Not openly. Not proudly. But they came. And in a fortress, where pain was currency, that was dangerous. High above, in the council chamber carved into the mountain's heart, High Elder Varric Thorn watched the shift with unreadable eyes. He had stood beside Rael's father. He had fought in the border wars when the southern packs attempted to breach the mountain passes. He had carried his mate's body from a battlefield where mercy had cost lives. Time had silvered his hair but not softened him. His back remained straight as a spear. His presence commanded silence without effort. He did not shout. He did not accuse. But when he spoke, wolves listened. "She gathers influence," Varric said evenly. "Standing at the war table. Young warriors seek her before they seek resilience." Rael did not immediately respond. Firelight reflected in his golden eyes as he studied the carved map of their territory. "Resilience does not require unnecessary suffering," he said at last. Varric's gaze sharpened. "It requires endurance. And endurance requires survival." The chamber fell still. This was not about a healer. This was about philosophy. About the future of the mountain. Varric had helped raise Rael after his father fell. He had shaped him, trained him, hardened him, and he would not watch softness creep into the fortress he had bled for. "She was purchased as an asset," Varric continued, "not as a symbol." Rael's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "She is under my protection." The statement was calm, final, but it was also a line drawn across stone. Varric inclined his head, outwardly respectful, inwardly unconvinced. The mountain did not survive through protection. It survived through discipline. And discipline was beginning to crack. Elara knew none of this. She only knew that the fortress had begun to breathe differently around her. Until the night the scouts returned. The gates opened long after moonrise. Bootsteps thundered through corridors. The scent of blood followed. Elara stepped into the hallway as 2 warriors rushed past carrying a third between them. Deep claw marks raked across his ribs. His breathing was shallow. Wrong. The fortress healer was already working when she entered the infirmary. An older wolf, steady hands, rigid mind. "You are not needed," he said flatly without turning. She should have obeyed. She did not. The scout's pulse fluttered weakly beneath torn flesh. "He's losing too much," she said. "I am handling it." But he wasn't. Not fast enough. Time narrowed. She moved to the opposite side of the table. Not touching him. Not challenging him. Just acting. Silver light bloomed from her palms. Brighter than before. Focused by urgency. The bleeding slowed. Torn muscle sealed. Breathing steadied. Around them, warriors watched with restrained tension. Then the room shifted. The Alpha King entered. Presence filled the space like gravity. Elara felt it immediately. That pull beneath her ribs tightening again. Unsettling. Unexplainable. She refused to look up. Focused on the life beneath her hands. When the final tear-knit closed, she stepped back. The scout lived. Silence pressed heavy in the room. "He would have died," someone whispered. Rael's voice cut cleanly through the air. "Leave." The command emptied the infirmary in seconds. Except for her. And him. And the wounded scout breathing steadily between them. Elara straightened. "You need more healers," she said quietly. Bold. Not defiant. Just true. His gaze studied her carefully. "Are you offering to train them?" "If they're willing to learn." A flicker crossed his expression. Approval restrained by something deeper. Before he could respond, the infirmary door opened again. High Elder Varric stepped inside. He had not been dismissed. And he did not require permission. His sharp eyes moved from the healed scout to Alara. "So it is true," he said calmly. "You interfere even here." "I prevented a death," she replied, meeting his gaze without lowering hers. "Brave. Perhaps foolish." Varric stepped closer, slow and deliberate. "Pain teaches caution. Loss teaches vigilance. You remove both." "I remove unnecessary death," she answered. The air tightened. Rael's posture shifted subtly, not aggressive, but alert. Varric noticed. Of course he did. "Compassion," the elders said evenly, "is a luxury mountain wolves cannot afford." Alara's voice remained steady. "Is survival not our goal?" "It is." "Then why reject the tool that ensures it?" For the first time, something flickered in Varric's eyes. Not anger. Assessment. She did not tremble, did not retreat. She stood in a fortress built on strength and did not bow. Varric turned to Rael. Authority granted in silence becomes influence without structure. It was not accusation. It was warning. Rael held his gaze. "She works in the infirmary from this night forward." The declaration fell like a stone dropped into still water. Varric's jaw tightened. "Officially?" "Yes." Silence stretched. Then the elder inclined his head. "As you command, Alpha." But his eyes returned to Alara one last time. Measuring. Weighing. Not dismissing. Not yet accepting. She was not a nuisance. She was a variable. And variables threatened stability. Later that night, alone in her chamber, Alara exhaled slowly. Her wolf paced beneath her skin. Not afraid. Not triumphant. Alert. As if aware she had stepped into something larger than herself. High above, Varric stood at the northern battlements, watching the training yard below, watching the southern wing where a faint candle burned in one small window. The mountain had survived invasion, famine. It would survive this too. But if she weakened the Alpha, if she softened him, Varric would not hesitate. The healer had taken her first true step into the fortress. And now, she would have to break stone. Chapter 4. Influence is one thing. Proximity is another. With her appointment to the infirmary made official, Alara's presence in the fortress became constant. Warriors no longer avoided her shadow. They entered the infirmary with stiffness, left with reluctant relief. And Rael began coming more often, never announcing himself, never interfering. He stood in the doorway sometimes, observing her work as if assessing strategy rather than healing. But something had changed. The air between them carried weight. It happened in the training yard 3 days later. A sparring match turned aggressive. A younger warrior misjudged his footing and drove his shoulder too hard into Rael's ribs. The crack of impact echoed. Alara felt it. Not the sound. The pain. It struck beneath her own ribs like a mirrored echo. Her breath caught. Across the yard, Rael stilled. His gaze lifted. Found hers instantly. Understanding flickered. Not confusion. Recognition. Her wolf surged forward. No longer restless, certain. The truth rose with chilling clarity. Faded. The word did not arrive as wonder. It arrived as fact. Every restrained movement. Every careful distance. The procession halted without touch. The way he never allowed their skin to meet. He had known. Long before she had. And he had chosen silence. The Northern Dominion banners rose at dawn 2 days later. Blue silk against mountain stone. Silver crescent wolves stitched in deliberate precision. Envoys entered beneath formal escort. The council chamber remained lit long past midday. Alliance was not announced. But it was understood. Reinforcement along the eastern pass. Trade secured through winter routes. Military strength doubled in times of breach. and a daughter of age. Elara did not ask. She did not need to. The bond within her had sharpened since the training yard. Not frantic, not afraid, alert, watching, waiting. If he had known, he would speak. Night settled heavily over the fortress. Wind pressed against narrow windows. Torches burned low in the corridors. Elara remained awake longer than necessary. She told herself it was habit. It was not. The knock came soft. Not a guard summons. Measured. Controlled. She knew before she answered. Enter. The door opened. Rael stood alone. No guards, there was no announcement, and there was no crown. For a moment, he did not step inside, as if crossing her threshold required more than movement. Then he entered. The door closed behind him. Silence gathered. You felt it, he said. Not a question. Yes. The word did not tremble. He remained several paces away. King in posture. Wolf in presence. I have known since the day you crossed the gates, he said. The confirmation did not surprise her. It settled. And you said nothing. Yes. Why? The firelight shifted across his face, revealing memory rather than emotion. When I was 17, the southern border fell. His voice did not change. My father had refused an alliance months before. He chose his fated mate instead. He believed instinct secured loyalty. Elara listened. When the breach came, the pack whose alliance he declined did not answer our call. Neutral. The word did not need to be spoken. 300 wolves died on the eastern ridge, Rael continued, including my father. The numbers settled into the room like ash. The council demanded reform. Structure. Strategic alliances above instinct. And you swore, she said quietly, that no ruler of this mountain would ever allow a mating bond to dictate political strength. The oath lay between them, unmoved, unbending. The Dominion offers reinforcement along our weakest pass, he continued. Trade. Soldiers. Stability. And a daughter. Elara finished. Yes. The bond pulsed once beneath her ribs. Not in jealousy. In challenge. You would deny fate? She asked. I would deny vulnerability. She held his gaze. Is that what this is? Something shifted. The distance between them shortened by a single step. Then another. He did not touch her. But warmth reached her skin. This, he said more quietly, is not weakness. Then do not treat it as one. The words did not rise. They settled. For the first time, restraint visibly strained. His hand lifted. Not to claim. Not to command. Simply toward her. The bond reacted instantly. Heat surged. Recognition flared. Instinct rose sharp and undeniable. Her wolf leaned into it, certain, unafraid. His fingers hovered inches from her skin, then stopped. His jaw tightened. Slowly, deliberately, he lowered his hand. If I cross that line, he said, voice roughened by control, I cannot return. Then do not return, she answered. Silence pressed between them. He closed his eyes briefly. When they opened, the king stood before her again. The negotiations are not finalized, he said. Nothing is signed. But they would be, unless he broke his oath. I will not risk this mountain, he finished. Not I will not choose you. I will not risk them. There was a difference. It did not lessen the wound. I will not beg for what fate has already marked, she said. A faint flicker of something fierce crossed his expression. I would never allow it. He stepped back. Distance restored. Stone rebuilt. At the threshold, he paused. Not turning. Not speaking. Then he left. The chamber felt colder without him. High above the northern battlements, Varric watched the Dominion banners ripple beneath moonlight. Stone survives because it does not bend. But bonds are not stone. They are fire. And fire, once lit, does not easily fade. Chapter 5. The great hall burned with torchlight. Gold banners hung from iron beams. Wine flowed. War drums thundered low and steady beneath the stone floor. It was not a celebration. It was a decision. Elara stood at the edge of the gathering, hands folded loosely before her. She wore healer's gray, no jewels, no insignia. Invisible. Exactly where she belonged. Across the hall, Rael stood beside Elder Varric. King. Warrior. Male carved from oath and expectation. He did not look at her. Not yet. Varric stepped forward first. His voice carried easily through the hall. The northern ridge grows restless. Their loyalty demands permanence. Blood binding blood. A murmur rippled. Everyone already knew what was coming. Varric turned toward Rael. The Alpha of Ridgefall offers his daughter, Lady Selene, in marriage. With this union, borders strengthen. Armias unite. Stability is secured. A pause. Deliberate. And our king will accept. There it was. Not a question. A decree wrapped in diplomacy. The hall erupted in approval. Tankards lifted. Warriors shouted in agreement. An alliance meant safety. An alliance meant strength. An alliance meant sacrifice. Rael had not spoken yet, but his silence was answer enough. Elara did not flinch, did not sway, did not let the storm inside her reach her face. Her wolf was silent, not broken, not crying, just still. Across the hall, Rael's gaze finally lifted, and found her. Time did not slow. It sharpened. He expected anger, pain, a plea. Instead, she gave him acceptance, calm, composed, as if she had already mourned something he had not yet dared to name. Something flickered across his face. Not regret, not quite, but something dangerously close to it. The bond stirred. Not violently, just enough. Enough to remind them both. He looked away first. Varric continued speaking of dates and ceremonies, and the strength of unity. Elara did not hear the rest, because she had already made her decision. That night, the fortress prepared for celebration. Servants carried silks through corridors. The Ridgefall delegation arrived before dusk. Their colors deep blue and silver. Lady Selene walked beside her father. Beautiful, confident, certain of her place. Elara watched from a balcony as they entered the gates. She felt nothing. That frightened her more than heartbreak would have. In the infirmary, she packed slowly. Not much. Her herb satchel. Her notes. The wolf bone pendant she had owned since childhood. She moved like someone finishing a task, not abandoning a life. Her wolf did not resist. It understood. He had chosen his kingdom. She would choose herself. Near midnight, she stepped into the courtyard. No annoncement. No farewell. The guards nodded respectfully as she passed. The healer leaving late was no unusual sight. At the gates, she paused. Just once. The fortress loomed behind her. Stone and duty and a king who would not claim what fate had offered him. The bond inside her did not ache. It tightened, then quieted. She stepped beyond the gates, and did not look back. High above, in his chamber, Rael stilled mid-breath. A strange emptiness swept through him. Not pain. Absence. His wolf surged violently. Not with longing. With alarm. He moved to the balcony. The courtyard below was nearly empty, but at the far edge of torchlight, a single gray figure passed through the gates. Leaving. The bond did not snap. It stretched. Thin. Fragile. For the first time since the oath he had taken years ago, fear entered the king's chest. Not of war. Not of politics. But of losing something he had never allowed himself to keep. And this time, There would be no council vote to undo it. Chapter 6. High above the courtyard, Rael stood frozen at the balcony. The gates had already closed. Ilara was gone. The bond between them did not snap. It thinned. Like silver thread pulled too far. His wolf did not rage. It mourned. A low, restless ache spreading beneath his ribs. Below, the fortress roared with celebration. Music, laughter, the promise of alliance. None of it reached him. For the first time since taking the oath years ago, doubt carved through him like a blade. And doubt was all the opening betrayal needed. Your Majesty. Varric's voice drifted from behind him, smooth as ever. The Ridgefall Alpha awaits the ceremonial binding. Rael did not turn immediately. The oath echoed in his memory. The one he had sworn after his father's reign collapsed into bloodshed. No fatmate. No instinct-led decisions. Only alliances. Only structure. Only control. He had believed its strength. Now it tasted like loss. He finally stepped back inside. The great hall blazed with torchlight. The Ridgefall Alpha stood tall beside the long table, his presence heavy with quiet ambition. At his side, Lady Selene wore blue and silver, poised, composed. Her expression unreadable. She did not look like a bride. She looked like strategy. Varric lifted a goblet. To stability, he announced. To a future ruled not by reckless passion, but by wisdom. A pointed glance toward Rael. Toward fate. Toward what had just walked out of the gates. Goblets were passed. Rael barely registered the cup placed in his hand. Across the table, the Ridgefall Alpha raised his own. But did not drink. Lady Selene watched Rael carefully. Not with affection. With calculation. Rael drank. The wine was darker than usual. Thicker. It burned on the way down. A moment passed. Then another. The ache in his chest sharpened. Not emotional. Physical. His vision blurred. His wolf did not howl this time. It recoiled. Cold spread through his veins like creeping frost. The goblet slipped from his hand and shattered. Gasps rippled across the hall. Kale was at his side instantly. My king. Rael tried to stand. His limbs refused him. And then he saw it. The Ridgefall Alpha lowering his untouched cup. Lady Selene stepping back. Unshaken. Varric did not look surprised. He looked relieved. Seal the doors. Kale roared. Steel rang against steel. The hall dissolved into chaos. But Rael heard only one thing as he collapsed to his knees. Varric's voice. Calm. Certain. You were never meant to rule unbound. Rael forced himself to focus. Breath coming shallow. What have you done? Kale demanded. Blade at Varric's throat. Varric did not flinch. What was necessary? He crouched beside Rael, lowering his voice, not hiding it, but making it intimate. Your father nearly shattered this kingdom chasing his fated mate. When she was killed, he waged war against 3 territories in his grief. Thousands died. Murmurs trembled through the restrained warriors. Varric's gaze hardened. I ensured that would never happen again. I guided you to take the oath. To choose alliances over instinct. To remain governable. There it was. Not protection. Control. The Ridgefall Alpha spoke next, voice low and cold. The marriage was a distraction. A grieving king is easier to remove than a mated one. Lady Selene's eyes flickered. Not cruel, not gleeful, simply pragmatic. If you had marked her, she said softly, this poison would not have worked so easily. Rael's blood turned to ice. They knew. Varric inclined his head slightly. The moment you claim a fated mate, the bond strengthens you beyond council influence. You would answer to no one but the moon. The poison surged violently now. Silver ash and wolfsbane. refined specifically for alpha blood. Rael's wolf screamed. Varric's final words reached him through the haze. You chose distance over destiny, and that distance made you vulnerable. Darkness swallowed him whole. Halfway down the forest road, Elara staggered. Her breath caught sharply. The bond did not thin further. It convulsed. Pain, sharp and foreign, tore through her chest. Not hers. His. She turned without hesitation. And ran. By the time she reached the fortress, the great hall was silent. Varric and the Ridgefall Alpha were restrained under Cale's command. Lady Selene stood guarded but pale now. Elara. Cale breathed in visible relief. He's dying. She did not spare the traitors a glance. She moved. Rael lay on the infirmary platform, skin ashen, veins darkening beneath the surface like spreading ink. Elara's hands trembled only once. Wolfsbane, she whispered, refined with silver ash. The fortress healer shook his head helplessly. It's binding to his wolf. She already knew. She began working, cutting, draining, mixing crushed herbs into blackened blood. But the poison did not retreat. It clung to his core. There was only one way. She closed her eyes. If I draw it out, she said quietly, it will need somewhere to go. Cale stepped forward. No. She looked at him evenly. If he dies, the kingdom fractures. I can endure pain. They cannot endure collapse. Before anyone could stop her, she pressed her cut palm over Rael's chest wound and pulled. The bond ignited. Silver heat tore between them as the poison transferred, seeping from his veins into hers. Blackness streaked beneath her skin. Rael's chest rose sharply as breath returned. Elara's knees buckled. She collapsed. Rael woke to her falling. The bond was no longer thin. It was blazing agony. He felt the poison. Inside her. His roar shook the stone walls. A sound of pure, unfiltered devastation. He caught her in his arms. No, he whispered hoarsely. Not her. Not because of me. An elder stepped forward. Ancient, moon-marked. They are chosen, the elder said solemnly. If you mark her, the bond may consume what threatens her. May. Rael demanded. There are no guarantees with fate. Elara's breathing faltered. Rael did not hesitate again. He lowered his forehead to hers. This is not to claim you, he whispered brokenly. This is to save you. And he bit. The mark seared. Silver light exploded outward, flooding the infirmary in blinding brilliance. The poison writhed violently beneath her skin, then burned, consumed by the awakened mating bond. When the light faded, Elara breathed. Weak. Alive. The entire fortress felt it. The bond settle. Unbreakable. From the doorway, Varric watched in stunned silence. The very thing he had feared most had come to pass. The king was no longer restrained by counsel. He was bound by the moon. Rael rose slowly, Elara still cradled in his arms. His gaze found Varric. You feared a king ruled by instinct, he said, voice steady despite the storm inside him. He stepped forward. But you should have feared a king who has something to protect. Silence fell heavy across the infirmary. Varric straightened despite the blade at his throat. You will execute me, the elder said calmly, and prove my point. A king ruled by emotion. Rael's expression did not change. No. That single word carried more weight than a roar. You will stand trial before every territory my father bled to unite. Your confession will be heard. Your collusion with Ridgefall will be recorded. And when judgment falls, it will not be mine alone. Varric's composure cracked for the first time. Public disgrace. Stripped authority. History would remember him as traitor, not architect. Rael turned his gaze to the Ridgefall Alpha. The alliance is void. Ridgefall will answer for attempted regicide. The Alpha gave a slow nod, pride swallowing fear. Lady Celine lowered her eyes. Not defeated, but exposed. Remove them, Rail ordered. Chains tightened. Steel shifted. The conspirators were led away. The doors closed. And the chamber finally quieted. Only then did Rail look down. Elara lay in his arms, her skin no longer darkened by poison. The silver mark at her neck glowed faintly, fresh, undeniable. He brushed a trembling hand through her hair. "This was never meant to touch you," he whispered. For a moment, nothing moved. Then, a breath. Soft. Fragile. But real. His entire body stilled. "Elara," he breathed. Her lashes fluttered. Slowly. Deliberately. Her eyes opened. Not confused. Not frightened. Aware. She did not look at the room. She looked at him. And then she felt it. The bond. No longer distant. No longer restrained. Alive. Her fingers lifted weakly to her neck. To the mark. Understanding dawned in her gaze. Rail did not look away. "I would undo it if I could," he said quietly. But it was the only way. Silence stretched between them. Not fragile. Not broken. Weighted with everything unsaid. Her voice, when it came, was barely more than breath. "You finally chose." Not accusation. Not forgiveness. Just truth. Rail closed his eyes briefly, the words striking deeper than any blade. When he opened them again, there was no doubt left inside him. "No more oaths," he said. And this time, the promise was not to a council, not to a kingdom, but to her. The moonlight slipped through the high windows, pale and steady. And for the first time since she had walked away, the bond did not strain. It settled. Unbreakable. Epilogue. Evening settled softly over the courtyard. A wooden sword clattered against stone. "Father?" Rail turned. His son stood a few steps away, only 3 winters old, yet watching with a focus that felt older than his years. "When someone does something bad," the boy asked carefully, "how do you decide what to do to them?" "Not who is bad. What to do to them." Rail knelt before him. "You don't decide from anger," he said. "You decide from what keeps your people safe." The boy tilted his head. "Even if you loved them before?" A shadow crossed Rail's expression. "Yes," he said quietly. "Especially then." He rose slowly. "An elder once betrayed this kingdom. He believed control was stronger than trust." Varric's name remained unspoken. "He lives," Rail continued, "but without title, without power. That is his consequence." The boy listened without blinking. "And the other king? The one who tried to hurt you?" "He is no longer king," Rail replied evenly. "His lands stand under our banner now. No divided rule. No separate armies." Ridgefall had not been destroyed. It had been reshaped. "And his daughter?" "She remains under strict law," Rail said. "Watched. Given a chance to atone. Not to rule." The boy frowned. "Why forgive at all?" he asked. "Why not just punish everyone?" Rail's mouth curved faintly. "Because if I had only punished," he said, glancing behind the boy, "you would not be standing here." Small brows lifted. "Why?" Footsteps crossed the stone. Elara approached, calm as moonlight, her hand resting gently over the curve of her rounded belly. Rail straightened as she reached them. "Because," he said lightly, though truth weighed beneath it, "your mother once chose mercy, when I did not deserve it." Elara gave him a look, half warning, half amused. The boy blinked. "You were bad. I was proud," Rail admitted, "and wrong." Elara brushed her fingers through their son's hair. "The moon may guide us," she said softly, "but we choose whether we listen." The child leaned into her. "So, A good king doesn't just punish. Rael stepped beside her. A good king protects his people, he said, and understands that fear obeys, but it does not stay loyal. Elara laced her fingers with his. And a true ruler remembers he does not stand alone. The wind moved gently through the courtyard. The kingdom stood whole. Not because it had never fractured, but because it had learned. Rael looked at his son, at the child yet to be born, at the woman who had once walked away rather than be forced to stay. A good king, he said quietly, chooses what strengthens tomorrow, even when yesterday still aches. And if this story meant something to you, if you believe power should learn, if you believe mercy can reshape kingdoms, then stand with this realm. Subscribe. Share the story. Let more voices hear it. Because every kingdom grows stronger when its stories are carried forward. This time, there was no doubt left in him. Only legacy.